Hey everyone, and welcome back to the second video in my little series of celebrating wedding week this week. So if you didn't see my previous video, I showed you all how I made my DIY Minnie Mouse wedding bouquet. If you haven't seen that, I'll put it on the screen somewhere as well as link it down in the description box so you can go ahead and check that out. But today I'm going to be sharing another DIY project with you, and that is going to be my seating chart for my wedding. I'm absolutely in love with how it came out, so I'm super excited to be sharing with you all how I made it. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get right on into it. So if you would like to see how I made my DIY seating chart for my wedding, then just keep on watching. So the first thing I did is I wanted to do a little bit of painting of this bulletin board that I ended up picking up, I believe from Hobby Lobby, maybe Joann's. It's been such a long time since I've bought it, I honestly don't really remember where it's from. But the wooden border around the bulletin board, I decided I wanted to go ahead and paint it white. So I picked up this like craft wood paint from Hobby Lobby, as well as the paint brushes that I'm going to be using. Those are also from Hobby Lobby. And yeah, I kind of just painted it white. Pretty self-explanatory. I also did place some like construction type paper like on the bulletin board to just kind of minimize messes, keep from getting paint on the actual bulletin board. And yeah, I let that set for a good 24 hours before I started doing anything else, just to make sure that the paint was 100% dry. thing that I ended up moving on to was all of my various Cricut projects, all of the paper items that you saw with my seating chart. I made all of that with my Cricut. So as far as the decorative border that you see along each of the paper items on my seating chart, I found that on Cricut's gallery. I think I just typed in either like borders or invitations, something like that, but I think it was under like one of like the invitation images, and everything else I just typed in and did the print then cut option. So with each of these paper items, I did them a couple different ways. The first time that I ended up printing out the find your seat paper item, for the lettering, I did specifically the print then cut option, which basically means you print the lettering from your actual like traditional printer, and then you put it on your Cricut sticky map, put it through your Cricut, and then it actually cuts the lettering out. With the find your seat lettering, that is the only time that I ended up doing that, just because obviously it cut out each letter individually and I had to glue them on to the decorative paper backing, which you will see in just a minute, which obviously can be very tedious and took a lot of extra time. So, and with all of the other lettering that I ended up printing out, I decided to just type it in from my Cricut application and then just print it without cutting it. And especially because all of the other lettering was a lot smaller compared to the find your seat lettering. So I definitely didn't want to have the Cricut cut out each letter individually, and then I had to figure out how to, you know, glue them so they all looked even and perfect, especially with my long nails. So I did that a couple different ways. I recommend just printing it to your printer and you're good to go. Now for the decorative border, the first time I ended up printing it out, I didn't really do anything special. I just kind of pulled it up to my Cricut application and then I started, you know, cutting it with my Cricut. When you do that, it actually, obviously it cuts out the design, but it also cuts out the middle portion, which you will kind of see as I'm working on the find your seat paper. And after working with that, I realized that I didn't like that. That also led me to doing extra work that wasn't needed. So with all of the other decorative borders, I went into my Cricut application and you're actually able to click on the middle portion of that border and you can lock it or welt it. I apologize, I don't know like the specific term, but it's possible to just kind of lock it in place so your Cricut doesn't see it, I guess you could say, and it doesn't end up cutting out that middle portion, which I think worked a lot better. So that was fully intact. I printed out each of my, you know, tables and who was going to be sitting where. I cut that out with like my precise cutting board, glued it on, and it was good to go. It was definitely a lot easier printing or cutting everything with my Cricut the second time around. So I apologize if that doesn't really make sense to you guys. I feel like if you don't have a Cricut yourself, it's probably not gonna make any sense. But I kind of just wanted to throw all of that in there because it would save you guys a lot of time if you guys end up doing something similar. So here's kind of what I'm talking about with the find your seat portion. I ended up cutting out another piece of like the cardstock paper to size, ended up gluing it on the back of the border. And then I started to lay each lettering down and glue them into place. And for all of these things, I decided I wanted to go with a glue stick to secure them, just because I felt like either using like a glue bottle or even tape, I just felt like that wouldn't give like a seamless lay throughout, if that makes any sense. So I decided to go with glue sticks, and that ended up working really well. And for each of my table numbers, Cricut also does print out like a border around it. So I just went in with like my precise cutter, and I just cut around that border. And now that they're all cut to size, I laid them on top of the decorative border, and then I just started gluing them down where I wanted them to go. At this point, it was actually nighttime, so I apologize if the images look a little wonky. I tried to mess with and edit with the white balance, because the light that I had turned on in this video, it turned all of my footage like super orange. So if it looks a little bit different or it looks like extra edited, that's why. I didn't want you guys to be staring at like super like orange and blown out clips for the rest of this video. Now that all of the paper items are cut, glued on, ready to go, now it is time to bust out our bulletin board again and lay everything down where we want it to go and things like that. So I'm not gonna really explain too much of this portion, specifically with the lights. I ended up picking up these clothespin lights from Hobby Lobby with the hopes of putting them on our seating chart to kind of like hold the paper items, and of course they light up so it would be super cute. You can kind of see me like messing with them in this clip, but the reason I'm not going to really be explaining too much or showing a lot of this particular night when I was trying to set up this board is because I just had the worst time trying to figure out how to get these lights on. They were definitely a lot shorter than I thought they were going to be, and every single way I tried to lay them on the board, like they were just too short and it just wasn't working. I was super frustrated this night, and I actually ended up giving up and finishing the board the next day. But yeah, once we get to the next clips coming up in just a minute, I'll kind of show you how I ended up putting the lights and leaving them. But as far as securing the paper items onto the bulletin board, I just got some clear thumbtacks. I believe those are also from Hobby Lobby. So this night I finally found a way that the lights would work, and I kind of just lined them along the border of the bulletin board, which doesn't look horrible, but I ended up changing it the next day because, I don't know, there was just something about it that I didn't like. But anyways, for this part, because these lights are battery operated, obviously it comes attached to a battery pack, and I decided to bust out some command strips. Just like the Velcro ones, you can get them literally anywhere at any grocery store. But I ended up attaching the battery pack to the back of the bulletin board. Obviously easy access to the switch to the light. Just so once, the day comes, this is set up. You don't have to, see the eyesore of the battery pack either laying next to it or maybe a little bit behind it. So I decided to bust out the command strips just to put it on the back of the bulletin board so that way you don't even see the battery pack at all. And these clothespin lights have a couple options when it comes to the light. So the first option is it does do like a blinking light as you're seeing, and then it just does like a standstill light, which I'm definitely going to be going with the standstill light. Just because it's such a bright light, I feel like the flashing option would probably throw everyone into a seizure. Now we're on to the next day, which you can see I am again changing the order of these lights, and this is the order that I ended up keeping them in. This worked out really well, really happy with how it looks. And last but not least, for our seating chart, I wanted to add a little bit more something to it. I feel like it still kind of looked pretty plain. So I had a bunch of faux flowers left over from my wedding arch, my DIY bouquet. So I ended up using those extra flowers up top just to kind of add a little bit of something there. So here I'm just kind of cutting the stems down to size with my wire cutter. Just kind of laying it on top of the board just to kind of get an idea of the order that I want the flowers to go in. all of that is done, what I ended up doing to make sure that they were secure, the 2 long greenery items, as far as like where the stems are that are kind of going over the bulletin board, I did secure those with those clear tacks, but I also decided I wanted to secure the flowers even more on the back side, and to do that, I just busted out some packing tape. I just taped over each of the stems, and then as you guys will see in just a minute, once I did have all of the flower items in place, and then I went over everything again with the packing tape just so everything was double secure, and this ended up actually working out pretty good. I feel like packing tape, it's so strong. I feel like a majority of people already have it on hand, and the great thing is you're taping everything on the back so no one's gonna see it. So yeah, I'm really happy that this worked out. And yeah, so here is the final product of my DIY wedding seating chart. I really hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. If you're someone that's really into like wedding related videos, I have a whole wedding playlist here on my channel where I share like story times as far as like my engagement at Disney World, shopping hauls, things that I bought specifically for my wedding, and even my quarantine wedding that me and my husband had last year. So if you haven't seen any of those videos, I will link the playlist here on the screen or down in the description box so you guys can go ahead and check those out. But yeah, I'm gonna get going for now. I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye everyone.